Good morning. I am Michael J, and we're so excited to be here for training today. And we're going to talk about how we do seller listing presentation. So, no matter what anybody tells you in real estate, there's only two issues: price and motivation. And it's really important that you believe that because a lot of times it's the human nature of the interaction and confrontation where people get emotional. And then you got to kind of remember, if you make the seller wrong, it's going to be really hard for you to be right, number one. So our strategy is on price, and we have a strategy on motivation. And if you send the pre-listing package, it's really important because if they have a big objection or really emotional, they kind of draw out that objection before you even get to the house, and they can disqualify them. So 20% of all the people you meet, they're just going to sign and they're just happy that you're there. 80% of the people where the fortune and the conversion is your skills, right? Making sure that they're qualified and motivated. And also that they like you and they trust you. And your skills and your mindset will really shine as a professional listing broker. Because remember, as the listing agent, you're the employer and you're sitting on one side of the table. And then there's 15 people on the other side of the table with all the pent up buyer demand in a seller's market. And you have a lot of power because if you pick the right price, then the property's going to sell, 99% of the time. We can't change, the x-ray vision of the house to see, the material defects. But as a professional, you want to be on the lookout for them because unless they're paying cash in this market, it has to pass appraisal, it has to pass inspection. And the more time you take at the beginning to be honest with the seller, the easier and smoother the presentation will go. And the whole 5 steps of selling a house, getting through the offers or 15 offers in today's market, the inspection or them waiving the inspection. But then the appraisal shows up, and if there's material defects, you're not going to get by the appraiser just because they're motivated to buy the property. The collateral still has to be good. And the funds have to be good. So if they're paying cash, the funds have to be good at the very beginning. And then, showing up to close. And sometimes deals die just because they just ran out of gas, right? They're just not motivated or they have regret. Literally last night, I have a guy that had a regret and just they're not on to do the house. So you can make the business decision to throw a temper tantrum and get mad and cuss them out. Or you say, well, hey, how much is this relationship worth? To me, a relationship in real estate is worth $250,000, right? Because I can literally sell you 10 houses over the 3 years or 5 years or 20 years that we're going to be in business. And that's important to know, right? That you are running a business. So let's dive right in. So we follow the Mike Ferry sales organization, right? So skills-based training on direct sales. You might say, well, we're going to find the seller, right? You're going to bribe them, you're going to give them all your commission and you're just going to work for free. Or you're going to find them, that you're having a conversation about real estate. That's a lead, right? So if you say, why am I on the payroll? My job is to go out and take 60 to 100 listings this year. My job is to go out and help 30 to 50 buyers this year and solve their problem. So if you find them, it's got a predictable income because you did your job. Just like, I'm a Tom Brady fan. Do your job. Let's go. Let's freaking go. Right? Let's go do our job, make respect in the marketplace, have a reputation in the marketplace, and then a great reward for doing a good job of solving people's problems. Or number 3, they find you. So it's like, you're discovered, you're a superstar in real estate, or you're discovered in your sphere of influence, or you're discovered in your family as a real estate professional, and they respect you. Now, if they try to say, oh, well, just do it for 1% or 2%, do they really respect you? Or is it a business decision? Yeah, sure, I'll do it for 1% because you're going to buy 5 properties this year. And you are in business, right? You run a small business, right? Starting the first day you get licensed. So the first step to our process is a pre-qualification. Number one, to see if they're qualified. Number two, to see how motivated they are. So it's real easy on a scale of 1 to 10. What is your minimum standard for your time, right? So if I say, hey, I try to make $1,000 an hour every day, and I work 8 to 12 hours a day. So that means I need to make $8,000 to $12,000 a day. So for me, that's like 60%, or let's say just half of one commission. So that means every 2 days I need to sell a property, and then they need to close in 30 days. So when you're doing your math of the money equation, you have to look, how much does it cost me to live? How much is my average sales price? How many do I need to sell per month? How much outside income do I have? And am I short or am I over, right? Minus your taxes and marketing expenses. And you got to be honest with yourself about that. Because if it's, well, hey, I'm going to let my buyers pay my bills and my listings is my savings and investment, that's a good strategy. So when we look at the pre-listing questions, you want to be excited, right? Because if you think that your presentation is going to be great, it's going to be perfect, they sign the commission at 7%. They price the home to sell. And right now we have fake prices, right? Every house is $30,000 to $50,000 underpriced because the listing agent is promising them a bidding war if they price below market value. And that's their strategy. It's like, hey, if you want to get a cash buyer, maybe they'll waive their inspection. We'll find, maybe somebody out of area that doesn't really know the prices, and they'll be emotionally attached to the price so much that they'll overpay for the property. Rather than if we only had 5 or 10 people look at the property, and then they, they're like, they're not motivated. So they just pass, right? I would say, well, if it's on the market for 30 days or 45 days, we'll come back. And I've walked into houses this week where, it's priced at 600 and it's like, oh no, this house just like 570. But if it was 540, you wouldn't even get a showing because there's 20 to 30 showings a day on the hot properties, and you only get 5 minutes to be in the house. They're so backed up with the buyer demand. So let's talk about this. So when you send out a pre-listing package, it talks a little bit about you, and you can click below. There's no secrets in real estate. It's all out on the table. It's all put together as parts and pieces from other people. But number one, you want to have your marketing plan. Number two, just so they know the expectations and the steps to the sale. And they have the disclosures. So a lot of people will not want to, touch and feel something when they're at the presentation. And it's real simple. Hey, I'm sending over a package of information. It's really important to set expectations and have you review it before I arrive. Can you take a minute to review it? Oh yeah, sure. So you can put it in an Uber and send it over there if you're busy. You can drive it over there. You can email it to them. You can text a picture of it even to their phone. So they have, some basic expectations of the steps to the sale. And you want to make sure that you're really clearly listening, because the more you listen in the pre-listing or the pre-qualification, the smoother the appointment goes, because you know more about them and what their needs are. So you don't want a skill-less doctor. You don't want a skill-less pilot, right? Would you go to surgery with somebody, it's the first time they operate on you? Or they don't have a checklist, like for the pilot to take off. It's like, let me off the plane, because we got safety involved. So if your safety is involved in making sure that the person is qualified, so you just don't waste your time, or they have unrealistic expectation, the pre-qualification will let you know that. And as a professional, you want to help the people that really have a problem and want to be helped. Because those 20% of people, it's a very simple process. It takes 15 minutes. because you were the professional. So you want to know where they're moving to and when they want to be there. And you want to know, who the decision makers are because, oh, I'm the man, I make all the decisions. And the wife runs the whole house. You just shot yourself in the foot. Because how many times you want to make the presentation? One time, two times, three times? You need to make a presentation to the dog because the guy isn't the decision maker, the woman is. You have to be very clear. And I always say, as a sales professional, that I'd rather be honest with you now than you resent me later. Because lying by omission is how most people lie, right? You meet somebody, statistically, they're going to lie to you 3 to 5 times in the first 5 minutes because they can't deal with confrontation. They have insecurities, they have pain, they have perceived injustice, or just plain out fear that they're not going to be liked. So when we're dealing with human emotion, we have to be very clear. And the great salespeople ask a lot of questions. And sometimes you ask the third question, they'll tell you the truth. The first 2 times, they just straight lied to you. And then if you want to set an expectation on price, what are you hoping for when I see you tonight at 6:00? And you just write it down. It's not the time to get in a fight on the phone. You can't sell them the house over the phone. They can't hire you over the phone. So, and me even seeing the home does not change the value of the home, right? They can get the Zillow or the Redfin estimate over the phone from a computer. But even Zillow, having 70 to 100 million people a month go to their site, they'll be honest. They'll say, well, it's within 17%. And it's like, who would sign a contract saying I'd take 17% less when a house is $800,000? Oh yeah, here, I'll just give you 150 grand because it's a cheap commission. They don't care about the equity they have in the property. And that's very important for you to care because you are the sales professional. You have seen hundreds and thousands of homes. So you have to be very clear to say, well, that's a good benchmark, but we're not there to prove them wrong, right? We want to investigate. So what Zillow and all the computers don't see is they don't see the condition of the property, they don't see the improvements of the property, and they don't see the style that people will pay for. It's just impossible because you'd pay $800 for appraisal, and with 190 million houses or 120 million houses in Seattle, in the United States, how could they do that? It's impossible. It doesn't pass the laugh test. So then you can ask them, how did they determine their sales price? What improvements did you make to the home? And write that down. It's important. And then you can ask them, how much they own the property. State and federal law wants to protect the consumer because if they, if they're in a short sale situation or pre-foreclosure situation, if they can't perform and give us clear title, then we have to make modifications. And it's illegal to lie to the buyer and market a property, basically fraud. Because if I haven't made a payment for 2 years and I owe the bank 90 grand and I overpaid for it in a bidding war by $60,000, hey, newsflash, we're over 150. Oh, by the way, it costs 10% to sell. So now you're negative, let's say 225. Do most people have $225,000 in their account when they haven't made their payment in 2 years? No, they're in fantasy land, right? And that's part of the presentation. But I'd rather know now and be empathetic with the customer and say, hey, you know what? Maybe the worst case is we get you $3,000 cash for keys. Maybe we rent out the property to recap some of the equity before you move. Hey, maybe you just live here for free for a year and a half. Like most people, the average foreclosure in America takes a year and a half to foreclose. So having useful knowledge, but more importantly, being empathetic to their situation can, take them from apathy or depression to a little bit of hope of exiting the situation. So then your next one is, you're going to ask them, you're not thinking about selling it yourself, have you? Because, if they're just using you for a free appraisal and then they add 10 grand or minus 10 grand and throw out the sign, I don't like being used. But even if they were in a bad situation, being empathetic, you could assist them, and or just know that that house can be on the market and that you could put one of your buyers into that property. And then the timing, right? Set an expectation. Usually I'll talk for an hour, which is way too long, right? Because if you're there for 15 minutes and they sign, you're a sales professional. If you're there for 30 minutes, you're kind of a social visit, social worker. If you're there for an hour plus, they're never going to sign the contract, you're a charity worker, because you're not asking them to sell. You're not listening clearly. Their actual confidence in you goes down because they're just in a state of doubt, right? But no decision is a decision. It's no, right? Just like a date, hey, let's go out on Friday night and have fun. Maybe, right? The answer is no. So you have to be realistic to go to the next person. Now we can, continue to follow up, because, if 80% of the people we talk to say no, or they're not interested, the fortune is in the follow-up, because people's lives change in 30 days, 6 months, a year. That's why the sales gurus suggest, talking to people at least a minimum of 4 times a year, because things change, especially now, 40 million people not working. You might have a job next week. So, they're high on the hog one day, and then, they're super panicked the next. And then just asking them why they're moving. So if you said, well, I'm tired of the substandard living conditions, or it's too small, or somebody died, or we're moving up, or moving down. There's about 20 reasons why people really move. But let's be honest, moving sucks. It's a lot of stress and expense that confronts people. So setting clear expectations is very critical. Now, if you get to the appointment and they didn't even open the pre-qualification, the first thing we want to do is recap, right? I'm really excited you invited me over here today to get your home sold. Let's quickly look at the home together, or you can walk through like a buyer and just pick out, the defects in the home. And then you write that down. But you don't want to sit there for an hour just BSing, when, they might be scared that it's going to take, 2 hours, 3 hours. So keeping to your asking permission for 15 to 30 minutes to see the home and do the appraisal, go through the analysis, and ask for the sale is critical. Because some people, based on their personality, they're just going to sign it, because no matter what you say, as long as you don't screw it up, the 20% of people are just going to say yes anyway. So keeping it simple. So you also want to be on the lookout for material defects. So material defects is like there's a hole in the roof's not going to last 5 years, based on the underwriting standards for the collateral. So to be a low risk loan, the bank makes standards on the property. So if it does foreclose and they lose, let's say 20% of the value of the house, that they're not getting a bad collateral as well, that they got to go spend $40,000 or $50,000 on repairs to put it in a condition to sell to another person. So the biggies are the roof, right? It's supposed to last 5 years. The siding is not deficient, or the paint's falling off, or it's warped, or it's rotted, right? Here in the Northwest, that's the big thing, is dry rot. And also the insect problems, right? The beetles, the rats, the termites, and mold. So you can see it, right? It's black mold, it's white mold, it's green mold. And then you have number 2 would be the crawl space. If they have rats and never even been downstairs, they might not know they have rats and they freak out. But usually $3,000 to $4,000 to clean out a crawl space. If they have old plumbing and bad water pressure, get out your checkbook, $6,000 to $12,000 for update on plumbing. And we're not trying to scare the customer, but we want to have a conversation early, because when it comes up in the inspection or the appraisal, right, they know, oh, hey, this is my problem. It's not the buyer's problem, right? It's like the septic tank. They didn't use the septic tank for 5 years and not pay the $700 to pump it. That's the seller's responsibility. And then cosmetics. So like appliances that don't work, get out your checkbook, 3 to 5 grand. And then toilets that don't work. Water damage is humongous because you can't see it. We don't have x-ray vision, and it will have, it might be the whole floor that's bad, and it might be bits and pieces. So that's material defects, right? If the furnace physically does not work, right, it might be $6,000, $8,000. If it's got an oil tank that's buried, or it just has oil heat by itself, right? It could be, $1,500 to $2,500 to decommission that, but what are you gonna do with an oil furnace? Nothing, right? You're gonna have to get an electric or gas furnace to replace that. So if that's a concern to the buyer. Then the next item is, so you've done your mental notes, is actually determining the price. So we follow a scripted presentation. Number one, that you don't miss anything. Number two, you're a professional, right? If you're taking off an airplane, you're gonna have a checklist. And the seller doesn't know that you're reading off a checklist, right? It's just it's your notes. I've written down 3 important questions to ask you. Number one, do you absolutely have to sell this home? Number two, will you price your home to sell? Or do you want to be on the market for a really long time, right? You want to be animated, but you want to be friendly, right? Because nobody wants a boring presentation, just like me. If I've been talking for 13 minutes, it's like, okay, I already tuned out. But I do it because I care that I want to make you a sales professional so you can have a smooth experience, right? It's fun to go to work when you're winning. So if we don't have plays that work, right, what are we doing? We might as well just work at McDonald's, So would you like fries with that? And that's also an alternative, right? And number three, do you want me to handle the sale for you? Like, I don't know nothing about you, Michael J. I said, that's why we get together. So at the end of my presentation tonight, one of three things will happen. Number one, you'll have the opportunity to list your home with me. Number two, you'll decide not to list your home with me. And number three, I'll decide not to take the listing. And any one of the three is fine. And so you're setting up the expectation, right, that there's an opportunity to buy. But, no matter what, you should list your home with me. And then we go right into price, right? So we can quickly review the questions we asked you over the phone. You said you're moving to California, correct? You said you'd like to be there in 3 months, correct? You're not thinking about selling the house yourself, right? And you told me about the very important features that you put in a hot tub, and you have a covered deck, and you have RV parking, and you have a fenced yard. And I can see that those are really nice features that you added for your enjoyment. Now, the question you're thinking of is, can I sell the enjoyment to the next buyer? Usually like 10 cents on the dollar, right? So they have to know that we can't sell their enjoyment to the next buyer, but we want to commend them on, doing improvements for what they like. And so then you're also going to ask them, well, I'm glad that all the decision makers are here. Now, if the decision makers aren't there, then you have to make a decision. Hey, how many times am I going to do this presentation? To the wife, to the husband, to the dog, to grandpa. And sometimes we don't know, but when we ask them in the pre-qualification or the confirmation of the appointment, we want to know that they respect us to actually be there and they get the information, because we can't assume that one's going to explain it to the other person. And then so then you start in. So if you say, okay, I prepared what we have as a current market analysis. There's 2 parts to this research. Part 1 we call Fantasyland, what homeowners list homes for. And part 2 is reality, what professional real estate agents like myself sell homes for every day. We're going to have to decide tonight where we're going to spend our time. Let's quickly go through the 2 parts together. So the first part, obviously, is their house, right? Okay, hey, you've got 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, that's 2,500 square feet. You've got a 9,000 square foot lot. You've got a 2-car attached garage, and it's stuck in 1980. It's important to date the house. Because if they're comparing it to brand new houses, which is the top of the market, which, might be, $900,000, and then they're in 1980 and they're at, 625, there's a reason why there's $275,000 difference. There's a $60,000 kitchen. There might be a $20,000 or $30,000 bathroom, right? There might be $20,000 worth of flooring. There might be an obsolete floor plan. They might not even have a garage, right? And to wait 3 to 6 months for a permit and spend $60,000 on a garage, most people just go to the next house. So you have to be very honest with the condition of the house. And then when you do the CMA, right, you're gonna have a price per square foot. You're gonna describe to them the conditions. Hey, these are houses within 1 mile radius. They're similar size, they're similar age, and then there's outliers. If it's on the waterfront, it's gonna be another $1 million. If it's got a view, it might be an extra $200,000. If it has a 6-car garage, it might be another $70,000. And it's important to be realistic on the comparables because we're using the same standard as the bank uses for the appraisal. 1 mile radius, sold within 6 months. And in this market, it might only be 3 months because the prices are changing so fast. And then bedrooms, bathrooms, garage, condition, square footage, right? So if you said in our market, the average square footage is $300 a square foot. If somebody has an 800 square foot house, you say, well, that's $240. Like, yeah, but a piece of land in my neighborhood is like $400,000. So you could have a really small house and still be worth $750. If we go 30 miles south from Seattle to Tacoma, it's about $225 a square foot. And a lot is usually worth 1/3 of the value of the house. So if you said, okay, hey, the same 700 square foot house for $225 would be like 300,000. And, but the dirt's only worth 60 grand. So you have a 375 versus 725. And that's totally normal because of the value of the neighborhood. So when you're looking at the comparables, so based on this information, I'm going to suggest a list price of $725,000. Now, I know you have 4 questions for me. How much is my house worth? How much are you going to charge me? How are you going to sell it? And why should I choose you? And I'd like to give you those answers right now. Because if you give them the answers to the most common questions, they can sign the contract. But they have to be on for the price based on their motivation. So when we suggest a price, we immediately say, there's 3 ways to price this property. We have a strategy, and then we have tactics to accomplish that. And if you say, hey, the relocation buyer is going to pay over market value because it seems cheap to them. So if you list it at 750,000, it's going to be a market time of, in this market, 1 to 4 months. And you're going to have anywhere from 0 showings to maybe 15 showings at an over market price, because they just might be curious. They might like the style. They're just in love with the property emotionally. If we price it 3% below the pending sales, the houses people have just made offers on in the last 30 days, you will have a good demand. So like say our average market time right now is 6 days. So between 6 days and maybe 30 days, you'll have 15 to 30 showings, and you'll see anywhere from 1 to 3 offers. Now, if you take a fake news price or below market strategy, hey, let's start at 675. Let's have 60 to 150 people show up, and we'll have anywhere from yeah, right. So you'll have 10 to 30 offers, and then every 10 showings equal one offer, right? So you can kind of calculate it in reverse. And you say, well, what the advantage is to you is that if we have 150 people inside your house, we'll have more offers and we'll have better quality offers. We'll have more cash offers. We'll have people that do pre-inspection or waive their inspection. We'll have people that are financing, and they'll break open their piggy bank and they'll say, hey, I'll pay $20,000 to $30,000 over a low appraisal just so I can win the bid and compete with the cash offer. So the seller has a guarantee in that situation. So let's say, market value is 725, it's 675, and they can bid it up to 775. That's fine as long as they can verify the cash that they have it, or they will fix the low appraisal. Because remember, we can't see the material defects. And even if they waive their inspection, there's still going to be an appraiser that shows up and says, I don't care how crazy you Seattle people are. This house is only worth 725. But if they say, hey, we'll cure the deficiency with cash, the sale goes on. Because the bank isn't going to get mad if you put an extra $25,000 or $30,000 into the sale, as long as you have their down payment of what's required. There is one caveat to that. The bigger the down payment, the lazier the appraiser gets. So if you have half down or 25% down, it's pretty much a cakewalk for the appraiser to reverse the numbers. They're not supposed to do it, but it's just kind of the way it works. So we have a price recommendation. And here's the hard part. You need to shut up and listen, because if they pick any one of the three, you win because they signed the contract. It's real simple. At what price are you a seller? And you just wait. Whoever talks first loses, right? And then they can say, well, what are you going to charge? What's our net, right? But picking a price is important because that's the first part of the strategy, because price is your best marketing tool. The lower the price, the easier your job is, because it will attract more buyers organically. And if there's a reserve, you have to be honest at that point. If they pick the 675 price, it's like, okay, if you get 10 offers for 675, I was kind of wrong on my price recommendation because the market has suggested that your house is worth 675. And that's the bad news, because they are the highest buyer for the home until they get an offer from the buyer. And you have to be honest with that, because that's the reality. So if they pick the market value 725 list price, it's okay. Then you have 3 net proceeds sheets. So you have one at 750, 725, and 675. I was like, well, what would I net at that? And then you immediately give it to them in writing, so there's not any ambiguity. Oh, you said at 675 we get this. Yes, based on the mortgage payoff, the interest for the interim, because interest is arrears, is 1 month behind, the liens on the property, the mortgages on the properties. And, then at that point, you can ask, hey, you said you owe about 350, is that correct? Do you have a mortgage statement that shows that? That's, not 6 months old with 6 missing payments. And that's where reality comes in, and they might be 6 months late on their payments. They might be in default. So notice of default is given when they're 60 days late on the payments. And then you'll know that they're having some. Now, if they forgot to pay their mortgage because they're busy, that's not the same that, hey, I lost my job and the reason we're selling is because we can't pay our bills. And not only can we pay our bills, we don't have any equity in the property, and we're going to be homeless. And at that point, it kind of shifts, because you have to be able to know that they are going to leave the property voluntarily. And sometimes, we're playing social worker and sheriff, because, they just straight lie to your face. Yeah, hey, we're gonna sell, but they're going to squat in the property, and you're not going to get paid, because unless they leave and they clean out the property. And a good buyer's agent will have a walkthrough, 1 or 2 days before, to make sure that, the people actually leave, and they don't leave $5,000 to $20,000 worth of junk behind. And so you have to be honest to have the disclosures, right? In the disclosure in the pre-listing package shows, hey, if you're late on there's different options, forbearance to push off the payments, short sale to walk away from the negative equity without a blemish on your record for foreclosure, actual voluntary foreclosure, where they just hand over the keys, and then a loan modification. Loan modification is bad because you're not going to get paid. They're going to drop their payment from $3,500 down to $2,200, and they're going to reduce the principal from $350 down to $120, and they have a viable solution to stay in their home. But that's reality, right? They have enough information to make an intelligent decision, right? And they won't They won't be mad at you for giving them good information because you're their advocate. That you're going to, give them quality information and follow the state guidelines for disclosures. So the next step is they go through the numbers and then they say, okay, let's go. So you're going to sign the listing contract, and then you're going to be start marketing it immediately, right, to your sphere of influence, and you're going to get a copy of the key. You're going to order the sign. You're going to follow your checklist, right? Because it's a launch. Because we had a pre-checklist to get the listing, and then we have a checklist for great customer service. And you're going to set the expectation that, hey, we're going to have a weekly conversation. So we have our finger on the pulse of the market. And you have that expectation, because every day that your sign is in their yard, their confidence in you goes down. Why isn't it sold yet? Why aren't we having a bidding war? Why don't people like my house? Right? It's always the price, right? Or their motivation to sell the home. So if they're more motivated, they will adjust the price and setting that expectation, hey, I'm sorry, I was wrong. In 30 days, the house hasn't sold. We're going to have a conversation about a price adjustment. And I'll say, what do you mean you're going to sell? You're going to have a price adjustment. It's like, I'd rather be honest with you now than you resent me later, because your confidence is going to go down me because I didn't do the job. My price was wrong. And that's where you tell them, you're the highest buyer of this home until somebody brings you an offer. And if the market rejects our price, that's who's to blame. Because if it's blame me and then you go hire another realtor and you raise the price or you have the same overprice, we're doing a disservice because the home is never going to sell. And then they're going to be insulted if they're an emotional person at the real market value. Maybe it's 700, 695 on our example of market value 725. And it's like people look up to prices, look up to 700, look up to 1 million, look up to 800, right? Their loan limit usually. But we never spend the customer's money. We let them decide. It's like, hey, for $20,000 more, it's a difference of maybe $110 a month payment. Would you like to go look at another house that's a less expensive monthly payment? Or does this house have the features that are worth that? And the same thing, you got to shut up and listen, because we're not spending the customer's money. They're going to decide. So the checklists are important. The motivation is important. Your energy is important, because you're working with these people. They might be new, they might be old friends, and you think of it as a presentation, right? So the most important part of your job is to make presentations. And if they say no, or they go through objection, that's the next week's video, is objections of the seller, right? I don't know, right? I don't feel comfortable talking to you. I can't honestly communicate with you. I don't understand you. I don't see value in your proposal. I don't think you can do the job. Sometimes I don't know is just fuck you, right? I'm not interested. And you always have the right to ask questions, right? But if you're telling them what to do, your probability of success goes way down. Selling is a series of asking questions, right? So you get enough information to make an intelligent decision. So also, if they say, your commission's too high, oh, I never pay that, right? Or if they say, well, I like you, but my wife doesn't like you. Or if they say, well, we'll think it over, right? Or, we were just curious. You have to dig deep. And even if it's the last question with your hand on the door, say, hey guys, is there just one thing stopping you from selling your house? Is there just one thing you change and you can just get this on the market rather than start all over for 1 to 10 hours with somebody else? And then that's where you have to really listen again and know to do it and take notes, because if you make the same mistake on 10 properties, you're wasting your time, right? I keep going and they reject my price, they're greedy, or they feel it's more, or they think it's too cheap, or they don't like my strategy, or they don't like me. You have to make changes, right? Because you'll just be crazy to keep doing the same thing over and over again, or never even getting the opportunity to make the presentation is even worse. Because even if you're suck and you have no skills, you can outproduce me, a broker of 26 years by frequency. You go on 100 appointments, I go on 10. I get 7, you get 25. You're a better salesperson than me, just because you're excited and you're nice, right? Because remember, those 20% out of the 8,000 people that are going to list their house this month, or maybe 9,000, 20% are going to say yes to anybody, right? Because they don't know that there's no skills required to get a real estate license. They don't know that 90% of the people fail in real estate. They don't know that you haven't sold a house in 6 months or a year and a half. They just don't care because you were nice and you made a great presentation and they trusted you. So if you have any questions, give me a call. And each person should have a folder: your pre-qualification checklist, your resume, which includes referrals or Zillow reviews, the marketing plan, the CMA, the copy of the unsigned listing contract, the disclosures, and your like cover letter, right? Like, hi, I'm so excited to meet you on whatever their appointment date is. And so they have something, tangible, because some people, they just like to touch it. And if no one else sent them a pre-listing package, you already won, because your degree of professionalism and your expectations are already outlined. So when you meet, right, number one, if they have a really big problem, they can burn out before and not explode at the appointment. And then number two, that you are a sales professional, right? You are taking this job seriously. And you know that being as the employer of having a lot of listings is a really lovely way to run real estate, right? You're not selling from an empty cart, right? People are calling you. You have signs out. People are calling on the signs. They're calling on your online ads. And you are the sales professional. And that's what we all want, respect and security and the reward and the recognition that we're winning, right? Based on your blueprint, 2 to 3 appointments as a brand new person. And it's just the minimum, right? But if you were a doctor and you looked at your calendar, you say, well, I can take 3 appointments a day, 5 days a week, that's 15. If you have 15 listing presentations a week, you're going to be rich, right? Even if you suck and you get 20%, that's 3 a week, which is 12 a month. That's 144 sales at 20 grand a clip. That's almost $3 million, right? So you have to ask yourself, is your goal to list 0 properties this week? More importantly, is your goal 0 listing presentations this week? So if we're a real estate professional and we know that listing property is way easier than babysitting buyers for 90 days, you have to be honest to say, where do I find them? And we have a list of like 100 different places you can find a listing, and you go to work today. It's over. And so that's your thing. It's like, okay, your past customers, right? And checking on them 4 times a year is your database. Anybody that you do business with, new people that you meet. Expireds for sale by owners. And just being in the process. Literally yesterday I was showing a property and another buyer just showed up. Just by doing my job, I was there and he saw the land online, and he was there and made another presentation. And so presentation is your job, right? It's basically why you're on the payroll, is to go make presentations. Because if they're not face-to-face, they can't sign a contract for the 4 money-making activities: prospecting, follow-up, writing contracts, and negotiation. Is literally why you're on the payroll. All right, hopefully that helps. If you have any questions, chime in. And my cell phone number is 206-200-1234. You can text me. It's important to role play this presentation. So if you're not going on 2 to 3 appointments as a new person, you should be making 2 to 5 listing presentations a week, to the mirror, to another person, to your dog, to your